want to speak a little about a teaching that the fruit is the method. The fruit, what we're aspiring to, is the method. Or you could say the ends is the means. The ends is the means, which is really different to the end justifies the means. Because that term that people use, the ends justifies the means, is implying we're going to use a different method, a different way to get to what we want. Such as, I want to be happy. The way to be happy is to be rich. The way to be rich is to steal. That would be the ends justifies the means. If I steal, I'll end up being happy. And stealing and being happy are contradictions. You can't really steal and be happy. But a lot of people think this way. Whole nations have thought this way. It's really what colonialism was and is. We will make our nation happy by stealing. And it just doesn't work. It can sort of work in the short term, which is, I think, why the temptation is there and why the belief can be there. But actually, the fruit is the means. So for us as practitioners, our focus is on our mind, our individual mind and our collective mind, that having a mind that is awakened is the most beneficial way to be in this world. So then we can ask, what does an enlightened or an awakened mind look like? That's the fruit. So some things we could think about are that if we think about an awakened person that we either know or that we have read about, like Shakyamuni Buddha, some of the qualities of that sort of a mind is ease and easefulness. Or maybe best to start with an attentiveness, an awareness, a presence. So an attentiveness, an easefulness. And then I think equanimous, which is a little different to easefulness. I'll say something about that in a minute. A kind mind, a caring mind. Joyful mind, joyful body mind, and a sense of intimacy or unity with everything. So there's some qualities we think of. We think of someone who is awake, that's the state of their mind. And the only difference between them and us is that they are like that all of the time, and we have these qualities some of the time. So you could say that we are actually awakened, like we are Buddhas, moment by moment, and some moments we forget. And so some moments we aren't acting or actualizing that. So just to say a few words about each of these. Because this is the method, this is the means, is the same as the fruit. So this is what we would like to be, and the way that we become that is by doing it now. So we practice attentiveness in our zazen. That's one of the really primary things that we're doing when we do zazen. We're sitting, becoming aware of what our thoughts are, like intentionally aware, we're actively, what am I thinking right now? Rather than just thinking. The default habit of mind generally is just to think and not even be that aware of the stream of thoughts. They're just a cascading stream of thoughts that we periodically become aware that we're having, but a lot of the time we're simply just having them. So in Zazen we become aware of our thoughts, and then we slowly come back to our breath. Over and over we just come back to our breath. So we're being attentive to the present moment. The fact that we're breathing in and breathing out in this moment. So we're not just cultivating an attentiveness, we're being attentive. So we are being the fruit. We are being attentive. I was thinking about how we still need to think. So when we think of the past, we can think about the past as a way to learn. And when we think about the future, we're planning. So we want to learn from the past to be more beneficial in the present, and we're planning about the future because when that future becomes the present, we want to be beneficial in that moment. And we can think about the past and think about the future, learning from the past and planning for the future. We can do that in the present effectively in a fairly small amount of time. It doesn't actually take very long to learn from the past, and it doesn't take very long to plan for the future. So if we, with real awareness, noticing that we're in this present moment, thinking about the past as a way to learn how to be more beneficial, and if we're aware that in the present we are thinking about the future as a way to be more beneficial, it doesn't take much time. And then we are completely freed up for the majority of the time to just simply notice what's going on right now. So that's how the awakened mind functions in relation to attention. Primarily just being present-minded to people and to sounds, to objects, to sensations in the body. And being aware that reflecting on the past to learn and imagining the future to be beneficial, but mostly just present-minded, even in that reflection or that planning. And we can cultivate and be easeful, which is just to have, to cultivate this sense of the default state being at ease. One of the translations of dukkha, which we generally translate as suffering, one of the translations is restless unsatisfactoriness. And I think that that is a fairly common mind state for a lot of people. It's not necessarily loud, it's just a little restless unsatisfactoriness a lot of the time. And in fact, you could say for many people that is the sort of default state that then gets punctuated by periods of happiness or periods of easefulness. But then there's this restlessness that's sort of like tracking along in the background. There's this temporary relief from it. You know, like sometimes when people are eating, food is so nice. When people are eating, they're not feeling dissatisfied or restless. They're just having a really good time eating, or watching a movie, or listening to music. But there's a sort of a restless, slight feeling of dissatisfaction. And for some people, of course, that's loud. But for a lot of people, it's just there. It's just running in the background. So the awakened mind is not like that. The awakened mind's default general state is comfortableness. Comfortableness in the body and in the thoughts and in the space. just an easefulness. So we can be easeful. We can more intentionally choose, if you want to say choose, just recall might be better, to recall what easefulness is like and think, oh, just for a second or two I'm going to be easeful. So it's just like that, just for a second or two. And take a breath. It's going to look around. No one to be, nothing to do. Be easeful, just like that, for a few seconds. No one to be, nothing to do. That is the fruit. We can practice being this fruit right now. And over time, it actually starts to become more of the time. So it shifts from general kind of restless dissatisfaction, starts to actually move and become more easefulness, and a little bit of dissatisfaction, but more easefulness. And over time, we might start to get surprised that we're feeling more easeful, like, oh, this is amazing. Is what happens. And then being equanimous is a little different to easefulness. Equanimity is even in the midst of difficulty, when we're having to deal with something difficult that might even result in us maybe being tearful or being anxious, being a little worried. We can, even in that kind of heightened moment of wanting to ease ours or somebody else's suffering, even in that state, just sitting beneath the surface is a kind of equanimity. So we might look externally like we're, oh my gosh, something needs to be done right now. Maybe someone's hurt and we have to get them to the hospital. So our outward appearance and our outward activity is a little urgent and rushing. But in an awakened mind, there is a kind of equanimity that's running as a thread through all of that activity. So it's kind of like easefulness, but it's in the midst of activity. There is an equanimity. Not getting overexcited when things go well, not getting overly disturbed when things go badly. So we can do that. It's kind of like we say the word cultivate, but cultivate feels like it's just taking a step separate from. Better to just do it. Just do it. Just even for a second or two. It's not like saying, do it, be enlightened right this moment. That's a very big ask, but not an impossible ask, but it's still a big ask. But just do it for a few seconds is not too much to ask of ourselves. We might be feeling quite uptight about something because something kind of rather intense and challenging is happening, and we can just for a few seconds within all of that go, be okay. This will be okay. I'll handle this. Just for a few seconds, we can be this thing. We can be easeful. We can be equanimous. We can be attentive. And of course, we can be kind. We have this opportunity to be kind so many times in a day. The other day I had to go to Centrelink, and the man behind the counter was incredibly helpful. Not only did he show me what I needed to do, he took the time to write out on a piece of paper every step, like when you go to the website, go across to the far right and you'll see the 3 little lines. Click on those lines, then you'll see this, go across to there and go down. And he just like every step was so helpful. Sometimes navigating websites can be tricky. And so I was very thankful to him, and I said, thank you so much, you've made my life so much easier. I really appreciate it. And then as I was leaving, I thought I could just turn around right now and go back to the woman behind the counter and say, can I ask you to write down somewhere how helpful this person was to me, like, and make it some kind of like report. So I did do that. And she said, oh yeah, I'd love to do that. She wrote it down. She goes, yes, we've got this thing where we can do an evaluation, and I'll do that for you. And it felt really nice to have done that for that man who'd helped me, because it was something like 9 o'clock in the morning, and I was one of the first people that he was speaking to. But I imagine he was going to be dealing with, I don't know how many people, say 5 an hour at the minimum probably, but more than that, all day. So I really wanted to just do that. So we get these opportunities to just do little kind acts. And when the thought pops into our mind that we could do it, just do it. When you get the chance, just do it. Yeah. Another thing that an enlightened mind is joyful. And we can practice being joyful just about ordinary things, hearing the birds and appreciating them. Here at this temple, every time I come here, I'm just so aware of the dedication and effort people put into looking after this place. Like right now, there's these 2 incredible orchid plants. I don't know that much about orchids, but we're still in winter, so I'm not quite sure how come they can look so incredibly beautiful at this time of the year, whether they've been imported or from Queensland or something, I don't know. But we can just notice how abundant the world is, and let ourselves feel just some simple joy, even if we're having troubles in our life. It does no harm, and it does a lot of good, just to intentionally let some joy in. It's just a matter of remembering, every so often. It can be hundreds of times a day, or it could be just a few times a day. To just notice something around. Notice that the air is healthy to breathe, that we have food in our fridge, on our table, and let ourselves feel some happiness and joy about that. Actually, it reminds me of a cartoon by an Australian cartoonist, Michael Leunig. I haven't said his name for a long time. Yeah, Michael Leunig. And it's of a person standing at a crossroads, and one arrow says tax haven, and the other arrow says happiness, and he can't decide which way to go. He can't decide which way to go. You can see he's really tempted by the tax haven. That's a great example of the end, thinking that the means is different to the end. Why not just go straight to happiness? No, I'll try it, tax haven first. The cartoon might actually say heaven and tax haven, but I like happiness and tax haven. So we can just turn, we can, at that crossroads in a moment, any moment that's in front of us, we have that moment to just say, oh, I'm going to take the happiness turn, and just notice something. The last thing that I've just made on this arbitrary list of things that an awakened mind is that an awakened mind feels intimate and unified with everything. So an awakened mind doesn't feel like that their mind is a separate mind to some other mind, that their mind is different to some other mind. They feel intimate with every mind. And that includes like objects. What I like so much about the Buddhist teachings, and particularly in Zen, is this reverence for objects. In a way, non-sentience doesn't matter. The fact that it's not conscious doesn't matter. You can still feel intimate with it. Because everything in the end is made of the same material in the end. So the fact that it has evolved in such a way to have sentience is really just a step. It's just one of the steps. It's not that big a deal. So we can feel intimate with just objects as well as with sentient beings. Recently I've been listening to an audio book by a wonderful teacher, and he's also a neuroscientist, Rick Hansen. He's got a book called Buddha's Brain, but there's also an audio book, and I wish it was a physical book, but it's not. It's only an audio book called The Enlightened Brain. I'd really recommend it. But one thing he mentioned, and he goes into great detail, but I'll just briefly describe, that we have, from an evolutionary perspective, a tendency to elevate negative thoughts as more important than positive ones. And he explains this. We maybe all have heard this before, but it's really worth reflecting on. That from an evolutionary perspective, we had to be very attentive to negative stimulus, because negative stimulus could kill us. In terms of wild animals, or a jagged cliff edge, or a fast-moving river. We have to be very attentive to negative stimulus because we could lose our lives. Whereas positive stimulus, which we would think of from an evolutionary perspective as food and warmth and so on, if we didn't get that positive stimulus straight away, we probably could get it later, like tomorrow. So that the salience of negative stimulus evolutionarily is stronger because it might kill us right now. Whereas if we don't get the berries or the meat or whatever it is, the honey, we might still get it later. So it doesn't quite have the same intensity. And so what Rick Hansen was saying in this audio book about the enlightened mind is, that's the bad news, that's our evolutionary kind of karma. But we can intentionally, because we have this consciousness, and we are aware, we can be aware of our own awareness, like we can be a witness to ourselves. Because we have this capacity, we can now, living in a world that we live in now, where the negative stimulus around us is generally not, most of the time, at risk of killing us, generally speaking. One of the few places that we have to be particularly aware of is cars, because cars definitely can kill us as a pedestrian or in a car accident. But most of the time, most of the negative things that we're dealing with are just things like not getting on with somebody, or maybe losing a job. That would be pretty unpleasant, but it's generally not life-threatening in modern society, which is a large percentage of the world's population now lives in kind of towns and cities, and so we have this capacity to say, to intentionally say, I'm going to practice not feeding the fearful energy of negative stimulus. I'm going to intentionally make a direct effort to elevate positive thoughts, like let in the good, like actively let in the good more. So we can do that. We can actively, many times a day, like hundreds of times a day, we can let good thoughts come in. And when fearful thoughts come in that trigger this kind of primal energy in us to feel fearful, we can intentionally notice, that is what is happening, and I'm not going to give so much energy to it. I'm not going to feed that right now. I'm not going to feed that fearful thought. Listen to those birds. I'm not going to feed those negative thoughts. So we can very actively practice this fruit. The fruit of an awakened mind is to be aware of like stressful negative things, but only give enough energy to it as required, no more, only as required to minimise harm, no more than that. And instead, let all the incredible abundant goodness be the more dominant focus in our mind. So I think that's the main thing I really wanted to say today, that the fruit is the method. So therefore the way to experience that fruit is just to do it. Just do it. Just a few seconds at a time. Just a few seconds when the thought comes in. Practice being easeful for a few seconds. Practice being attentive for a few seconds. Practice being kind. Practice being equanimous. Practice feeling unified with everything. Practice being kind. Just have to do it. A few seconds at a time. Many, many times a day. And we will feel the effect. And the effects will surprise us. This is what happens in practice. People get surprised. Wow, I handled that so much better than I usually do. And that's because we're doing it. All right. I'm just going to make it so I can see the people online again. Would anyone like to comment, ask a question? Bill?
Yeah, thanks for the talk. Just really a comment that would have been halfway into the talk of you talking about the sort of default restless, dissatisfied state of mind, and I was like, oh, I'm in a restless, dissatisfied state of mind. Like I just like calm. And you guys like, I'm not going to be able to integrate these teachings.
Were you worrying about that? I don't know if people online could hear, but Bill was just commenting that when I made the comment about restless dissatisfaction or unsatisfactoriness, is this right? You noticed that that's how you were feeling?
Oh, it was after you've been talking about it for a while.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, people are like that, yeah. Oh, wait, I'm like that right now.
People are like that. Oh, wait, I'm like that. Yeah. I remember when I first came across that term, restless unsatisfactoriness. I heard it from Robert Aitken. I thought, oh my God, that really works. That's how I am. Yeah, that's how I am. And that provided, having that language provided the capacity to start saying, and I don't want to keep being like this. And then that created a drive. Mark?
I have this constant pain in my body, my neck, and I sort of got that background dissatisfaction, and occasionally I just be driving, walking, and I get this overwhelming sense of calm and happiness, and it's disproportionate. And I realise I'm not in pain, and that's all it takes really, is to and you have this glimpse, but that's all it is. It's a glimpse, and it doesn't last. But it's it's so joyous and it's aspirational. But,
Yeah.
I want more of it.
Yeah. Well, you'll get more of it.
Yeah.
You just have to do it.
Yeah.
You just have to do it more often.
Yeah.
Yeah, Thich Nhat Hanh often, many times, would say things like, just remember that you don't have a toothache right now. He would say, just have to, if you want to be happy, just for a few moments go, oh my God, my leg's not broken. Oh my God, I don't have a toothache. That's all you have to do. Oh my God, my food is digesting. Like, it's actually happening. That's all we have to do. Yes, Yi.
When talking about joyfulness, happiness, is just do it, the practice. It's like everything else, just do it.
Just do it.
Yes, as I used to feel like for the things for myself, I need to meet certain conditions, requirements before I can finally start practice the things. But nowadays, I'm more aware of just do it at the right moment. Don't wait for anything. The
Yes.
more you practice, the more you can feel it.
That's right, yes. And that reminds me, actually, I was thinking of an analogy for this. It's like if you want to be a runner, it's fine to work out in a gym and to study anatomy and so on, but you have to run. It's like that has to be the main thing you're doing. You can do a bunch of other things. You can do stretching, you can get a coach. But if you just keep doing those things, you're not going to become a runner. It's just not going to happen. You have to run. You just actually do have to do that. You can do those other things, and they will be helpful. Just like we also study, and we also contemplate, and we also have the precepts. We actually just have to do these things with our mind. We just have to do them. The more we do them, the easier it gets. Just like the more you run, the easier it gets to run. You can run longer, faster, with more ease. Same with this mental training. We will become more at ease. We will become more equanimous. We will become kinder. We will feel more unified with everything. It just will happen. But we do have to do it. We can't think that we're going to do it. Or we'll do peripheral things like reading. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. We'll just do our last chant and some bowing.